Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katahakis. I'm the clinical director of Center for Healthy Sex, which I co-founded with Douglas Evans, and we created Center for Healthy Sex as a resource for people in Los Angeles and around the world. We provide individual, couples, group, and intensive services for both men and women who have a whole variety of sexual concerns to address, such as sexual dysfunction, desire, sex addiction treatment, or support for partners of sex addicts. And today we are going to be talking to Diego Wallraff, who is Diego Wallraff. Sorry for butchering your name, Diego. He's a Colombian-German hybrid. He moves fluidly between the performing arts and the healing arts. And when not on a TV or film set, he dedicates his time to helping fellow humans overcome various kinds of challenges, especially in the field of sexual healing. His work guides people into the field of personal growth and healthy relationships and supports healing from injuries and sexual trauma. He applies his skills as a master body worker and sex and relationship coach, and he holds certifications in various modalities, including sexological bodywork, somatic sex education, shiatsu, yoga, breathwork, and tantra, including coaching and sound healing. And I personally have had the extraordinary experience of having a sound healing experience with Diego, which is indescribable. You really have to have the experience yourself. But he is absolutely passionate about the need for positive sex education and sees this as a pathway to be able to claim one's birthright, which is to be a fully realized sexual being. So Diego's passion and directive aligns directly with mine and Center for Healthy Sex. And I think you will find that you're in for an extraordinary treat with him today. So if you have any questions about sex or sexuality during this webinar, you can call Center for Healthy Sex at 310-843-9902. You can type questions into the chat box. If you want to ask a question anonymously, please email Morgan at centerforhealthysex.com, and he'll put your questions into the chat box for Diego. All right, so without further ado, I'm turning you over to the very creative and interesting mind of Diego Wallraff. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining for this webinar platform around, I want to say, modern sex education, because it's much needed. I believe that when I look into the world, we often need certifications for all kinds of things. Driving a car, a scooter, we get certified in massage therapy, we get certified in yoga as an instructor, doing breath work, all kinds of things. Vocations and professions usually require some kind of education so that you have the qualifications to step up in this capacity of whatever your name is, and then you do it. And I find it quite curious, if not even disappointing, that in some areas of life, no such certification is needed. And 3 areas really stick out to me so much so that it's like, how is this possible? So here is relationship. Do we need a certification for relationship? Do we need any kind of knowledge, any kind of qualification? Well, yes, we could benefit from it, but we're just thrown into it. We learn probably by observation of loved ones, parents, family members, friends. People are modeling around us how to do relationship. And if we take that as our guidance, oftentimes we'll fall short. But we keep stumbling through, and some of us make it, and some of us have a lot of drama, and then we make it again. And so it becomes an education through trial and error. The other arena where we don't need certifications is parenting. Like, really, we can get into a relationship, and then we become parents, and then we have these children. And, you know, as my kid went through school, yes, there were some resources for parents and we could ask for advice, but often we're left alone with the wisdom that is maybe instilled through family and friends and upbringing and all that, right? And here comes the issue of sexuality. We all do it, most of us, and we all learn by trial and error. There was probably not even modeling around that because not many of us saw parents and friends and loved ones model sexuality for us so that we could witness it and learn. So we're really left to our own devices to like struggle and how does this work? We know that certain parts fit into other parts and we figure that out somehow and some experiences are not so happy. In some of my education, especially when I joined the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, my God, the fact that something like that even exists is amazing. And it does exist in San Francisco. And I think an institute for just regular sexuality should exist. And maybe, some kind of schooling around that. And in fact, it doesn't. It doesn't. It only does exist when you are already becoming a geek around sexuality and everyone already thinks you're weird because you're studying sexuality and then you're trying to find names that are presentable. I want to be a sexologist. I want to be a doctor of, this and that. But how about sexual education or studying just for me as a normal human being? A normal human being who's going to go out into the world, eventually connect with another person and connect sexually. And how about learning some skills and some tools and some language, vocabulary, so that I can communicate with the other person or persons, depending on what your preference is, about sexuality, this subject that is so meaningful and powerful. And can cause so much pleasure and happiness. And at the same time, the other side of that coin is it can create a lot of damage and trauma. So as I went through these various educations, I became increasingly frustrated. The more I learned, I got angry. Little me, the normal Diego, got angry that the knowledge that I was acquiring over the years, it felt like it was withheld from me by my family, by my teachers, by the schools, by culture, by religion, and so forth. And not only was it withheld, but it felt to me like it was almost purposefully extracted from my life. And then I thought, why is that? And then I thought, oh, perhaps, well, that's kind of goes into social and political issue, but perhaps because maybe I'll just keep limping throughout life and I'll never come into my own personal power. And that's maybe a purpose, to have uneducated adults out there. Let's think about that for a minute. Looking at that the other way around, during the various trainings and educations around sexuality that I went through, when I learned more through my body, because it's different learning something through your head, right? And a lot of times when we learn stuff, we go to school and we put it all into our heads. And then eventually, maybe it'll trickle down into our sensory awareness system and into our bodily experience. But often it doesn't quite get there. But the trainings that I encountered along the way, and I have to say, there was some hits and misses, with teachers and teachings. But when I look at the positive experiences, and as I became, I want to say, more knowledgeable in my body about my own sexuality and about Me as an adult, as a fully realized sexual human being, I felt really empowered. And when I feel empowered like that, it feels like a crime to not share this potential power and strength with other people. And this is where, that crossroads is how much of it is consciously extracted or withheld from us through generations and generations so that I become pliable and governable. I don't know if that's the word, but, a bunch of people who are not in their center are more easily guided and governed than imagine a whole population of people being fully in their sexual center with full awareness and full knowledge and mindfulness around it and consciousness around it. Wow, that's a power that one has to then put up with. And so I encourage everyone to learn about sexuality in such a way that it gives you that inner strength to then step up and feel like you're really in your center, and you can make decisions from your center and step into life that way, create businesses, create art that way, create relationships in that way, create anything really you want to create out of that being, out of that center, out of that, may I say, sexual center. Because ultimately, sexual energy is why we are all here. And somehow this culture and this upbringing paints a skewed picture around sexuality, and it gets distorted. But if I can just look at sexuality and sexual energy in such a way that is life force energy, sexual energy equals life force energy. And as my grandmaster, Taoist master Mantak Chia says, sexual energy is the chief commander of Qi. We must cultivate it for health, wealth, and longevity. And when you take that as a lesson and you look at, wow, the realization that sexual energy is Qi. And a lot of times we don't have a literal translation for Qi, but we hear it everywhere. We go to yoga studios and there is talk of prana, sometimes talks of kundalini. And in circles with friends, we feel energy, moving through our bodies. And if you do martial arts, we definitely talk about Qi. And to directly connect it to sexual energy, some people don't dare to do that. And Grandmaster Mantak Chia says it's the same thing. Qi is the chief commander of that energy that runs through all of us. The energy that brought us here in the first place, and the energy that keeps us alive, and the energy that literally supplies life force and creativity to all my doings in this life, potentially giving me the power and creativity to create life from that center. I think looking at life in that way is a true gift, because the moment the door opens as I step into my day, if I live my life from that center, again, from that, let's say, sexual center, without creepiness, without sleaziness, without an agenda of trying to get into someone's pants, right? It's not about that. It's my life force energy. This is how I create life. Wouldn't that be amazing if everyone had a direct access to that and then step into life that way? Anyway, sorry, I get I get a little emotional and a little enthusiastic, let's say, about this topic because it's so meaningful to me. And I guess my goal in stepping into this arena of sex education and being a coach in sex and relationship is, can I give you some of that enthusiasm? Can I help you look at it in this way so that maybe your life may be transformed? And I know from my work with many people that a lot of people feel broken, they feel damaged around sexuality, and they feel hopeless and helpless. And to those people I say, there is hope. A couple of tweaks, some practices, viewing this in a different way can really help bring healing if you've experienced some negativity around sexuality in your life, if you have some history of sexual abuse or trauma, and it's hard for you to hear me as I speak so positively about sexuality. To you, I want to say, there is a modality out there. There's many modalities out there around sexuality, but one that I want to say specialize in is called sexological bodywork. And together with, sex therapy and counseling and positive sex communication and sex education, this modality turns lives around. I've seen it happen. Entire feeling systems are shut down after traumatic experiences around sexuality, and sexological bodywork can do a lot for the body to step back into life, into full-blown blossoming sexuality that I call everyone's birthright. Let me take a little pause right here. So you also heard that I navigate between the healing arts and the performing arts, or the other way around. Doesn't really matter. I wasn't always a sex educator. I wasn't always a sexological body worker. I wasn't always a sex and relationship coach. So allow me to paint a little picture as to how I got here. And maybe you find that interesting. And along the way, as we go through this presentation, you may want to ask some questions or give some feedback. So I was born in Colombia, raised in Germany, two very different cultures. I grew up strictly Catholic schoolboy, and I was taught mostly by Catholic nuns and Jesuit priests. Now, as I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a priest because they were good people. They were teachers. My parents loved them, and so I had their back. I thought, yeah, this is me. I'm gonna do that thing, that priest thing. And I was a passionate altar boy, and I was very efficient and disciplined. And I saw myself standing behind the altar and guiding people through mass and helping them somehow through life. That's what I thought priests do, and I found that very inspiring. And then I grew up in Germany, and I again had priests as teachers and so forth. But this discrepancy around my upbringing, around sexuality, and I think we can all agree, or many of us agree, that what I believe about sexuality, my values around sexuality are mostly downloaded, I want to say, and passed on through my upbringing, very closely related to what were my parents' beliefs around sexuality, what were the beliefs of my community, of my religion. There you have it. The culture that I grew up in, and so forth. So growing up between the two cultures, between Colombia and Germany being quite liberal around sexuality, being European and all, and the Colombians, at least what I experienced, very Catholic and pious, and sexuality was certainly not talked about. And you know what? I was a little kid. For sure, no one was going to talk to me about sexuality, being a little kid. And today, I highly disagree with that. I think sex education starts as early as we can speak to our children. Yeah, that's pretty early. And some people, I know, I've seen it. People get worried. People, like parents, people, concerned parents get worried that, oh my God, my child's going to be exposed to this thing called sexuality. And I have a boy. He's a young man now. And I have to say, I'm really proud. I'm a proud dad that I was able to support my son through these formative years and give him the kind of sex education that I would have desired to receive, and I didn't. And so I picked it up a little later. And this is my advice to all of us who feel like, oh, maybe I can learn a little bit more around sexuality. It is never too late. It is never too late to become curious about sexuality and spread your wings and be an apprentice again. Be a novice gardener and learn from masters or other loved ones who may have a little bit more knowledge, or from the opposite sex, or in relationship. You know, it's fabulous to learn new stuff, but our culture doesn't support that so much. As men, and I'm going to be a little bit cliche here, so forgive me for not filling in all the various nuances, but as men, it feels like we grow up in a way that we should know and need to know early on everything about sexuality. And what we learn, and I speak for me, we learn the things we need to know about sex by the time we're 14, 15. And then we move into our young adulthood with that same knowledge, maybe a little bit more practice, hits and misses, and maybe we flail around a little bit, and maybe relationships will put us into shape. By the time we reach 30, 40, and 50, that knowledge is still the same. Wouldn't it be nice to upgrade that knowledge? I mean, we upgrade everything else. My phone just told me last night that it needed an upgrade. The computers constantly tell me it needs an upgrade. All kinds of things around us need an upgrade. Why don't we upgrade our internal, personal, human operating system, especially around topics that are perhaps somewhat contracted and can benefit from some growth and learning? So, yeah, where was I? I was in Germany. Growing up between the cultures showed me that there were differences. And so this new way of learning about sexuality forced me gently to like open up and become something that I wasn't from my upbringing in Colombia. But I felt, pretty confident, and I was a people's person, and I was likable, and so I had a wonderful experience of my first lovemaking. That was absolutely lovely. I wasn't super skillful, but it was lovely. And I fast forward to my sexological bodywork training at the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco. And in those circles, when you come together with these sex geeks, quote unquote, people who want to literally learn more about sexuality, and we have these conversations about, well, how did we learn about sexuality? What was the pathway? What were the hurdles? What was the choppy waters we had to swim through in order to get to where we were? And when we shared stories about our first lovemaking experience, perhaps, I was shocked to hear that I was, out of 24 people, one of 3 people who had a positive experience. Really? The rest had some experience that they'd rather forget. And some people had experiences that shut them down for a very long time and caused severe damage. And I woke up to this reality that, how is that possible that it isn't this way? And yeah, I kept learning and learning in different ways through, I want to say, the sexological bodywork training. I took it one time, I took it a second time, then I assisted a third time, and then I taught pelvic release work in my 4th cycle, because every single time I went through the training, I felt like this is not enough. It's not enough. We need to learn more. I became slightly obsessive about wanting to learn more. I spread my wings into other areas, and mind you, I had to tread carefully too, because I really didn't know exactly where I was going into, and it was uncharted territory for me. I wanted to learn more about sacred sexuality, some expression that I had picked up along the way, and I was curious about it, and I thought, well, what does that even mean? Because in my Catholic upbringing, I didn't mention that I actually left the church at some point at 14 after a negative experience with one of the priests that who became a teacher for me, and yeah, so I had an unpleasant experience with this person, and I felt betrayed by him, and then by extension by the church and all that. So you heard the wheels, Diego's car, like, and I was out of there. And so when I heard the expression later on in life about sacred sexuality, I got really curious, because something sacred I only knew from church, right? How can you put sacred with sexuality? In my life, unheard of, right? Sacred sexuality. So it was unheard of. I was in shock and curious at the same time. And so, yeah, it was an expression to describe various forms of, I want to say, neo-tantra. Tantra, a practice, an ancient practice, I want to say, located, depending on where you go into the history, somewhere in India, about 5,000 years ago, a practice, the way it was introduced to me, that also included sexuality as a form of deepening my awareness. And so I was introduced to Tantra as a body-based spiritual path. And I was lucky, I want to say, that by the time I settled to that specific training, and I want to say, in this case, it was the sky dancing Tantra training that was conceptualized by Margot Anand, who wrote the wonderful book, The Art of Sexual Ecstasy and The Art of Sexual Magic. I had landed with teachers who had high levels of integrity. And I need to make a point of this, because the topic of integrity has been coming up lately a lot in these communities who dedicate teachings around sexuality. And when we go into the field of learning more around sexuality, it is a tricky field, because we don't really know who's who as we start out. So for me, the school I went through at the Institute for Ecstatic Living, or Ecstatic Living Institute, had that. Teachers with knowledge, and teachers with passion, and teachers who had a high level of integrity. So I really felt taken care of and safe. And that became my chosen pathway to illuminate the tantric path, if you will, for me, mostly. I learned from others, but that became the main avenue for me. And then I encountered a third path. And the third path had to do with the teacher I mentioned before. Mantak Chia is a Taoist master teacher. And I knew him from the time when I was a teenager. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. I had seen books on Tai Chi and Qigong and moving energy and things like that. And I was a very enthusiastic and passionate, as you can tell, martial artist. I wanted to fight like Bruce Lee, and I wanted to do all those things. And the mystery became about moving energy, this whole thing of concentrating energy on a specific spot, and maybe behind a specific spot as you land a strike, let's say, as you're trying to break that board. It was such a mystery to me, this elusive force of energy. And so fast forward to workshops that I have taken with Mantak Chia, I had known him as a Qigong and Tai Chi teacher, and I was very, very aware of his teachings around the microcosmic orbit meditation and things like that, and how to allow energy to flow through your body. And I was highly surprised to then hear that he now teaches around various subjects of sexuality and applying Taoism and the view of Taoism to sexuality. And that opened up an entire world, entire new world for me. And as I dove into it, it started connecting all the dots. So for me, what has become really rich is the combination of, being a geek and a curious learner around modern sex education, and you can do this in different places. You can even pick up an amazing book around modern sex education, combined with various practices around Tantra, which taught me that there's more to sex than meets the eye, right? Quite literally. There's other dimensions that all of a sudden can propel a sexual experience and a sexual union into higher realms, where all of a sudden I feel like, wow, sexuality and sexual connection can be so much more than just the physical sensations of pleasure. Now, they're fine and they're beautiful, and Tantra gets a bad reputation in the media and through certain teachers because either they overstep boundaries or they're just focused on the sexual piece. But the enhancement of sexual pleasure through the practices of Tantra, that's a given, and that's beautiful. But that's just a side effect. What it did for me is it connected parts of my being, my physical being with, I want to say, my heart center, my sensation and awareness of love, that we are all love, with my spirit. Now, this may sound a little woo-woo to you, but I can bring this down to a real pragmatic way of looking at the world. So connecting my physical body to my heart, to my spirit, or this dimension that knows there's something else out there, and something bigger than life, and something that I would call source energy or higher power, right? Because coming from the Catholic Church as a damaged altar boy, church vocabulary didn't work so well for me. So when I say God, to me, it doesn't sound so good. When I say higher power or source, the universe just opens up to me. And this idea that I can connect the various energies, right, and weave them through my body as I connect sexually and deeply, intimately with another, can propel me to such heights that I feel, I'm going to say it, godlike. And I am sure that many of us out there who have never heard of Tantra will agree that in peak sexual experiences that you may have had, you may have felt that opening, that light, or that feeling of like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. That's real, right? So again, sex education, modern sex education, connected to what I learned in tantric practices, where I learned the weaving of these various energies, connecting the physical, the pelvis, with the heart, the love energy that we all know about, with spirit, because we know there is a higher power out there. Connecting it to the energetics of Taoism and how Taoism views sexuality, that to me is the triple recipe for a successful experience around sexuality and being a fully realized sexual human being. All right. Please, if you have any questions, and I'm sure some of you may, and I don't know exactly how to operate the system because as an actor, I became an actor at some point when I was in Germany. I love live audiences, right? I was an actor at the National Theater, performing in front of 1,500 seats and so forth. So this format right here is a little bit foreign to me because I know you're out there somewhere, but I can't see you. And I know there's a system here where I can maybe look at participation or thumbs up or questions. And if you have any questions to what I just introduced or presented, please reach out and pose the question. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue talking, right? Okay, here's a question. What does a sexological body worker do? Great question, because I forget sometimes to talk about that because it's so normal to me these days. A sexological body worker works, first of all, in the field of sexual healing, I want to say. Forgive me if I occasionally don't use the appropriate vocabulary, because let's please agree that when we talk about sexuality, it is a delicate field and often uncharted territory for many, especially when we go into more extended areas and maybe darker areas. And we didn't necessarily grow up with vocabulary around that. And so right now we're entering an arena where vocabulary needs to be created for this field to be really precise around that. So as a sexological body worker, I work with people around sexual healing. People come to me with various topics, right? Feeling systems are shut down, sexual abuse, rape, things like that. And they have a desire at some point after doing some work with maybe sex therapy and so forth, to come back into what I just talked about, this idea and this feeling of being your sexual center. As a sexological body worker, I'm also a traditional body worker of 25 years. I've been doing traditional hands-on modalities, touch therapies for about 25 years. I've been educated as a massage therapist in various modalities. I'm a shiatsu practitioner, and so forth. So sexological body work applies touch to the entire body. Traditional contemporary massage session in a regular spa will drape a person around the genitals and the breasts. And in sexological body work, the agreement is that the whole body is available for touch if so desired, right? All these boundaries and agreements will be discussed before a session. So a session may start with an intake communication. What are we addressing through the sexological body work piece? And then we go into the body, onto the body. And it is like a full body massage. Literally, in the best sense of that word, we don't omit body parts unless agreed upon. And we touch genitals in such a way that is mindful, with the keeping the goals of the session always present. There's always an educational intent behind a sexological bodywork session. And the hands-on modalities that we use are for healing purposes. Yes, there is genital touch. Yes, sexual energy is literally used as the healing balm because it feels so good when it's there. Sometimes it's hiding and you won't feel much until maybe the pain starts dissipating. We go into the pelvis, maybe in a modality called pelvic release work. We address issues like injuries, recovery from surgery, traumatic births, addressing scar tissue, and anything that we may find in the pelvis. Now, I tell you that as a body worker of 25 years, I already knew that a lot of issues that the body holds are held in areas where the sun don't shine, because the other areas are really fairly exposed. We can touch those, we can knead those, and so forth. But a lot of Memories are held inside of the body, in the belly area, in the pelvis. This is where our vital organs reside, and our reproductive organs. And our work eventually guides us into the areas. Imagine massage therapy or deep tissue massage applied to the internal areas of the pelvis. And you can look at it in a geeky way because there's, I believe, 32 muscles in the pelvic floor. How about giving that some attention? And this is where my enthusiasm comes through. How about not just paying attention to pap smears and pelvic exams, but how about dedicating some time, attention, and some love to an extended period of time inside of the pelvis? How about preparing even the pelvis in such a way before we go in with metal instruments and start doing the things that we need to do, because we call it routine, what do you call it? A routine appointment, a routine regimen. And so sexological body worker goes onto the body, into the body. We work with sexual energy. We work with the genitals and with the whole being for the purpose of healing around sexuality. I hope that mostly answers your question. Let's see if there is another one. I think there was something somewhere. Also, if you need to reach out because I didn't answer a question enough, please contact the Center for Healthy Sex, specifically here in this case, Morgan at centerforhealthysex.com, or at some point you can also shoot me an email. I have a website, A Touch from the Heart, www.atouchfromtheheart.com, and this website was created back then when I wanted to put the information about sexological bodywork out there. So it's mostly geared toward that, but you can contact me through there, and we can chat some more about that.
Diego, on the top left of your screen, there's the option for attendee chat.
Okay.
If you click on that, you can see the most recent questions.
Okay. Katie, thank you for that question, and I tried to answer it. I hope I'm good. Maria, this is so needed and helpful. Love you. Thank you. Una persona en Arizona. Una persona en Arizona que te contactará. Okay. Muy bien. Gracias. Christina, would you say the difference between sexual body work and pelvic floor physical therapy would be the use of energy work? Would you say the difference between sexual body work and pelvic floor physical therapy would be the use of energy work? Yeah, let me think about that for a moment. Let me see if I pick up the question correctly. Yes, I think you're pointing to the fact that pelvic work in physical therapy does not address sexual energy. And that is so. If I go to a physical therapist and they do work inside of my pelvis, sexual energy is avoided. In sexological body work, we do not avoid it for a purpose. The more we avoid sexual energy, maybe it is necessary to avoid it for certain people. Absolutely, I don't doubt that, right? But if there is sexual trauma, and the more we avoid the sexual energy that could potentially be the healing agent, we tiptoe around the topic. We go around and round and round, and things won't get resolved. I'm not saying this is a universal medicine for all, right? But it is a highly effective modality to address issues inside the pelvis. There's a wonderful book out there called Headache in the Pelvis, written, and I'm sorry I don't have the authors in my head right now, but written by a physical therapist and a neurologist, and they describe in that book something called the Stanford Protocol, which describes pelvic work, internal pelvic work, without sexual energy, to address specific physical issues and pain situations in the pelvis. All right, let me see what else is here. Laurie, I got you. No, it's about the purpose and intention. Absolutely. Purpose and intention in the work is highly important. And before a sexological bodywork starts, before a sexological bodywork session starts, in that intake, in that communication with the client, those desires, the goals and desires and the purpose for a session will be set. And so, yes, purpose and intention, hugely important, because let me paint this picture. A surgeon taking a knife to a body and cutting you open for the purpose of healing is one situation. And a person who is not a surgeon, but is maybe attacking you, cutting you open with the intention of maybe robbing or hurting you, is a whole different story, right? Same action, potentially, if we paint that picture, complete different outcome, solely because the difference in purpose and intention. Thanks, Laurie, for that. Vincent, I keep hearing the concept of sexual addiction. As a tantric man, I don't believe in such a problem. What is your take on this? Thanks a lot for sharing with us. The way you explain this very tricky subject is fantastic. Thank you so much. Here is my take on it. I never believed in sexual addiction myself because as someone coming into learning about my sexuality, it was so awesome that I wanted to consciously fill my cup, so much so that it started overflowing. But there are people, and I know the Center for Healthy Sex knows this, and they have a whole program around this, and I'm not an expert on this, but there are people who, in quest for increasing their sexual experiences, end up causing harm to themselves or others because of addiction, right? So it isn't anymore about learning more and about filling yourself up. It is covering up for another issue, whatever that may be. I'm not the psychologist here at this moment, right? The moment my sexual activity, or any activity for that matter, causes harm to me or inhibits my way of life in a way that I can function properly, I would say we have reached or entered the arena of addiction, and it needs to be addressed because it could spiral out of whack. So if you feel that your learning around sexuality contributes to the liberation and enhancement of your life experience, beautiful. Be aware that it doesn't cover up for something. And what I find specifically tricky in tantric communities, that it isn't a spiritual bypass for something else. You know what I mean? Like using tantra or tantric practices or a certain behavior simply to get into someone's pants, to get someone to come into bed with you and connect with you sexually, and thereby causing harm. I have seen that too. I have seen a trail of destruction left by tantric master teachers, and I watched that and witnessed that in utter disbelief. How is that even possible? I think that the tantric community and everyone working around sexuality has to be impeccable in their practice to not cause more harm to clients or to themselves. I'm looking at the time. It's 12:49. Wow, time runs fast when you're having fun. Any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, let me just slowly see if I can wrap up in a way that makes sense. Where can you learn more? Well, you can learn more through contact me. Contact the Center for Healthy Sex. Contact me, A Touch from the Heart. I do one-on-one sessions, group sessions. I work with couples. I do retreats with my partner, and we advertise them as yoga retreats, and maybe some teachings from Tantra come into play with the highest level of integrity. And the people who participate, they leave in a way that their life is beautifully enhanced and changed forever, never to go back to this contracted way. I'm in the process also of conceptualizing. This is a question for you guys. I'm in the process of conceptualizing something that can be maybe an online sex education, the way I see it would benefit people. That 3-tier approach, and create a master lover program for men and women, and maybe different tiers where this is for young adults. You know, I wanted to write the one book, right, for my son when he turned 15, 16. I ended up not writing it because I was busy doing other things and acting and all that stuff. But maybe it's time, right, to write something for young adults specifically, for those who are a little bit older and have some experience and are diving into these thriving relationships and want to learn more about sexuality. And then I want to write something also for folks who are getting older, because stuff changes in our bodies as we get older. And I've seen people in, you know, their 60s and 70s have a healthy sex life and awareness of sexuality because they know how to harness it. Harnessing, that is key, right? Harnessing this life force energy so that you can stay vibrant and healthy. Like Mantak Chia says, we must cultivate sexual energy for health, wealth, and longevity. So I want to become, I don't know, I want to be 138 years old, healthy and vibrant. And so what's the format? Would you go on something like that? Would you be interested in something like that online? What would it be called? What are the topics that you're interested in? Things like that. So if we don't get to it now, you know, shoot me a little comment, either through my website or through the Center for Healthy Sex, and maybe we can elaborate on this some more. There's a couple of websites I'd like to, I'm not connected with them, but a couple of websites that I find really helpful, especially if you're a parent out there. Scarleteen, scarleteen.com. And this is the thing for parents. I've been there, and I've seen parents get really, really nervous around, oh my God, how am I going to talk to my kid about sexuality? You know, I myself feel a little dysfunctional about it. Well, yes, guess what? Your kids are going to get the information elsewhere, you know, and I don't condemn porn categorically at all. I think it's amazing that it exists. But if porn becomes my sole source for sex education, no bueno. You know what I mean? If parents don't talk to their kids and kids get their information from their friends and through a 3-second click on the computer, this is going to become their sex education. And we already are seeing the damage that it's causing. You know, the sexual desires or practices out there in the young community is very porn-like. And so this idea of conscious sexuality really needs to be instilled through the parents. Yes, parents, you've got to step up to the plate. No more excuses about, we don't believe, these are not our values, and our religion this, and our religion that, and our culture. Believe me, if you don't talk to your children about sexuality in the way that you deem right and according to your values, the internet will do it for you, and probably not in a way that you would appreciate. So it's an encouragement to parents. Even if you're scared or nervous about how to teach this, reach out and get some help and guidance on how to teach your kids who are going to be young adults and then adults how to navigate through this. And if you don't know how, you start with, you know, this subject makes everyone uncomfortable. It's something difficult to talk about, but I want you to have some information. This is what we're going to do. And maybe you'll look at this website together. Scarleteen.com. There is the sexological bodyworkers.org. It's the Association for Sexological Body Workers. They have a directory of practitioners all over the country, and you can look at who works in your area. Also, sexologicalbodywork.com has trainings if you're interested in something like that. Yeah, so any more questions? Let's see. All right, guys, how are we doing? Thumbs up, or do we need any more insight from something? Let's see, what else can I tell you? Oh, I did talk about harnessing. A good advice for men and is to harness the sexual energy. And what I mean by that is literally don't ejaculate every single time you come to a sexual peak. And it's not you're doing anything wrong, but when you're able to experience what the harnessing of sexual energy does to your entire energetic system, very likely you won't go back to the constant small sensational idea of ejaculation. Not that it isn't awesome, it's awesome. Ejaculation is lovely. But this is the thing, when I was a teenager who was experimenting around sexual energy, the moment before ejaculation was so awesome that I had this idea that I wanted to hover right there. I wanted to suspend myself right there before the moment of no return. We call that in our sex language, you know, if we give the sexual arousal curve numbers from 1 to 10, you know, 10 is that person's long gone, and the 8 is orgasm, ejaculation / orgasm, and then 7.5 is the point of no return. Many know that point. When you reach it and you pass it, it's like, you're lost. Celebrate, great. But also experiment and explore with what's in it for you if you can potentially harness that energy and use it for creativity, anything you want in life. We're approaching the 1 o'clock mark. We have a few minutes left. I have, one more person here. Oh, Center for Healthy Sex, thank you. Headache in the Pelvis, the book that I mentioned, David Wise, Rodney Anderson, and it's available on Amazon. I also want to recommend The Art of Sexual Ecstasy by Margot Amand, and anything Mantak Chia. And for everyone who wants to explore something like sexual energy from the point of view of Taoism, please get something that Mantak Chia wrote. I have a book right here called Sexual Reflexology. And another amazing book is The Multi-Orgasmic Couple. There used to be The Multi-Orgasmic Man, and then there is something called Healing Love Through the Tao, but it's too much right now. The Multi-Orgasmic Couple has amazing information around sexuality from the point of view of Taoism. And one of my all-time favorites is The Tao of Sexology, the Book of Infinite Wisdom by Dr. Stephen Chang. And this knowledge is probably around 3,000 years old. Mommy and Daddy, why didn't you tell me about this? So it became my task to not be that, but to be a little bit better than my parents, at least in that department, and learn language around it, communicate it in such a way that it is received on the other end. And I'm proud of my son. I don't think he's listening to this. He would probably be embarrassed. But that's the recipe for success right there. Education. Let me see. Thank you for your presentation from a former altar boy, also damaged by sexual child abuse. All right. I feel it. Thank you. How these connects with ethical non-monogamy. Ethical non-monogamy already says it. It's ethical. I mean, the ethical slut or opening up or books that give you language and tools to navigate that choppy terrain. It definitely works with that. Diana Richardson, The Heart of Tantric Sex, great book, absolutely. Thank you for those suggestions and participation. Thank you so much. I feel like you're sitting right there, even though I can't see you. And thank you so much for joining. Hope to see you again down the road sometime. Connect with me if you like.